Howdy and welcome to the Strange West Podcast. This is your host and word hustler extraordinaire, Trent Tano. Leading us in, as always, with their rendition of Eno Marconi's For a Few Dollars More is the mighty Mitch Polzak and the Royal Deuces. If you like your guitar slingers like you like your gunslingers, then head on over to MitchPolzak.com. That's Mitch, Polzak.com. In tonight's podcast, the Cowboys vs. Nazi adventure continues in Chapter 13 of Paris High Noon by yours truly, Trent Tano. You can pick up a copy today at parishighnoon.com, both paperback and ebook at parishighnoon.com. Paris High Noon t-shirts and sweatshirts and other swag are available at society6.com/Trentano. Paris High Noon and mustache t-shirts are available at society6.com/Trentano. And thank you again to James K. Doyle for lending us his time and his talent to the podcast. He really brings the voice of Paris High Noon alive. So without further ado, here is Chapter 13 of Paris High Noon.
Chapter 13, The Skull Badge. Meanwhile, back in Berlin, along the granite and steel complex facing Prince Albrechtstrasse, Germans in black uniforms studded with silver skulls and lightning bolts stood in silent watch in front of Gestapo headquarters. Inside, the ruthless gang of cutthroat gunfighters and man-killers that passed as the law in the Third Reich kept watch over the citizens, who milled around the broad boulevards, stuffing their faces with sausage, sauerkraut, and steins of beer. This was the ranch house of Reichsfuhrer SS Heinrich Himmler, a pig-eyed man who prided himself on cruelty and a knack for inspiring terror, talents he used in place of intelligence. He ran his ministry like a ruthless cattle baron, feeding the hungry steel file cabinets that lined the halls and rooms, chewing on reports from wherever the Nazi blood banner flew. The click of jackboot heels echoed down the gilded marble corridor. The SS gunfighters looked up from their files and typewriters at this subtle and purposeful sound. Coming down the hall was a large man, draped in a black leather trench coat that took a dozen steer hides to tailor. The SS gunfighters whispered to each other, wondering why the best man-killer this side of the Rhine had come a-calling. At the end of the hall, two guards snapped to attention. "State your name and business, sir." SS Sturmbannführer Bartholomew Schwartz, here to see Reichsfuhrer SS Himmler, Black Bart said. "Yes, sir." The other guard opened the door and closed it behind him. Black Bart wondered how long Himmler would keep him waiting. To say the two men disliked each other would be like saying Cain didn't much care for Abel. The door opened and the guard said, "Have a seat, sir. The Reichsfuhrer will be with you shortly." Black Bart clicked his heels and took a seat. He took a bullet cartridge out of his pocket and rolled it over his knuckles. It had more heft than the 9mm cartridges used for his Luger or any German gun. This bullet came from another time and place. Black Bart looked up at the clock. He knew his time on Earth was limited. A condemned man doesn't have to climb the scaffold to know he's seen his last dawn. Still, this wasn't the kind of ending he'd expected. Even God's greatest cynic couldn't have come up with a darker result for the Bavarian boy whose dreams were filled with horses, cattle, endless rolling plains, towering mountains, the lonesome wail of coyotes, and stoic cowboys sitting around a campfire telling tales. He grew up the son of a poor potato farmer, with only a one-eared plow donkey and his two hands to work the fields. His father was a humorless man who worked his two-eared son harder than the one-eared donkey. When his neighbor, Old Man Dieter, lost some milk cows, Black Bart decided to play the hero and find them up in the high conifer foothills of the Bavarian Alps. He had read how cowboys tracked rustled cattle in his old Shatterhand dime novel. After 2 days cutting for tracks, he found the milk cows lounging around a pond. With some cajoling, he was able to get them to follow him back to the village. Old Man Dieter thanked him. Others patted him on the back. Only his father cursed him. Black Bart had missed 4 days of work and would have to skip school in order to get caught up with his chores. "What good is tracking down old milk cows?" his father said. "Did you get a reward for your troubles?" "No, you didn't. And now we look like fools." "A cowboy doesn't look for a reward," Black Bart had said. "Helping people is its own reward." His father blooded him with an axe handle and said, "There's your reward. You remember, boy, no good deed goes unpunished." It was a lesson repeated with sad regularity. A short buzz sounded, and the guard told the major to enter. Black Bart put the big bullet back in his pocket, walked through the door. Across the room, a little pig-eyed man sat behind a mahogany desk. A large map of Europe hung on the wall behind him. Above, 4 large clocks with the names of Washington, D.C., London, Berlin, and Moscow ticked off the minutes and wound down the hours. Black Bart clicked his heels and shot out his right arm. "Heil Hitler." The little pig-eyed man didn't look up. "Be seated." Black Bart sat, holding back his desire to reach across the table and choke this man to death. Himmler shuffled some papers on his desk and then looked up. "I have been looking over your reports from Warsaw. Very impressive." "Thank you, Herr Reichsfuhrer." Black Bart could tell Himmler was hiding something. Otherwise, he wouldn't be acting so nice. Black Bart had been on Himmler's shit list since the night of the long knives. "Not that it's important," Himmler said. "I just hope you don't have any hard feelings." "My feelings are only for the Führer and the Reich," Black Bart said stiffly. "Therefore, they are hard for those who oppose them." A slit cut across Himmler's tight face. "Ever the tough man, eh? You were one of the best street fighters we had back in those days." Black Bart forced himself to nod. He agreed that those years after the war were tough, but he never saw Himmler in the thick of it. It was Rom, the burly, scarred veteran who led the brown-shirted SA stormtroopers against the communists, anarchists, and socialists. After the SA ran them right out of Bavaria, Hitler felt he had enough sand to overthrow the government in Munich, so he roused the drunks for the beer hall putsch and marched down the cobblestone streets. During the shots and shouts of that night, Goering took a bullet in the leg. Black Bart was able to drag the chunky field marshal to the safety of a bank. A decade later, Goering made a deal with Black Bart before the night of the long knives, and Black Bart took it, even though he had to betray his SA comrades to the SS and kill his best friend. That was the price he had to pay to see another sunrise. It made him look for dusk. Himmler looked at Black Bart. His lips trembled slightly. "You will go to Paris and take charge of a special task." The skin around Black Bart's jaw became taut. Only top hands were assigned to Paris, and he knew he was pulling drag. "Why me?" Himmler's eyes paled like a full moon behind the fog. He was not used to hearing questions unless they were from the Führer himself. Black Bart didn't give ground. The two sat across the table like gamblers after the final call, one willing to do everything to win, the other determined to finish the game. Himmler smiled. "It is a task you are uniquely qualified for. In fact, one can say you were born to do it." Black Bart said nothing. Himmler smiled at his advantage and shoved the file towards the edge of the table. A resistance network is active in occupied France. They have assassinated German soldiers, stolen requisitioned horses in Normandy, and robbed a Wehrmacht payroll. You are to go to Paris and take care of this problem in an expeditious manner. Black Bart had heard rumors coming out of the occupied France, but never thought much of it since it wasn't his range. Black Bart didn't pick up the folder. "I still don't see how I am uniquely qualified to capture some resistors. Any Gestapo lieutenant could do that." Himmler's gaze broke away from Black Bart. His Adam's apple rolled up and down his throat as if he was swallowing a turd. Unfortunately, SS Obersturmführer Hoff has been unsuccessful in his search. You are to go to Paris and take over operations. Hoff and his security team will assist you. I'd rather do it myself with my own team, Black Bart said. He didn't like the idea of having to partner up with some young pup who couldn't do the job right in the first place. Himmler's face tightened up like he just got done sucking on a lemon. There's no time for that. Hoff will bring you up to date. This mission is of the utmost importance. If word gets around that we can be stood up to, we'll have to kill more Frenchmen to keep them in line than we did during the whole war. If it makes a difference, you may take your valet with you. Black Bart smiled a little. Sergeant Scheer had been with him during the Polish campaign and had proven reliable in more than one tight spot. He was a good man to have riding shotgun. Still, Black Bart didn't reach for the folder. You were useful to us before, Himmler said, and we let you live. The way the war is going, how long do you think you'll continue to be of use to us? Black Bart gave Himmler a long, hard look. The pig-eyed man had thrown down his winning card on top of all the aces he held. As long as there was a use for him, the deal he made with Goering would hold. But like all things made by men, it wouldn't last long. Black Bart picked up the file. On the top was an old wanted poster of a cowboy with a long mustache that spread from ear to ear. Below that was a poster advertising Brazos Billy's Wild West show in Munich back in 1906. At that moment, the little bit of God's light that can be found in even his foulest creations sparked in Black Bart's heart. A sweet sage dream blew through him, where the trail was tough, but waiting at the end was the girl, the sunset, and a happy ending. It was like seeing his first horse opera at a Munich Nickelodeon. But just as quickly as the spark came, it was consumed by a bitter bile that churned in Black Bart's stomach until he could taste the fossil of every precious soft thing he sacrificed on his tongue. Himmler coughed. Black Bart looked up at him with wet eyes. So this was to be his last mission, at least in killing the old cowboy who once filled his heart with reckless hope. Black Bart would get to ride into the sunset before Himmler gunned him down. Himmler pointed to the clocks on the wall. Time's a-wasting.
And welcome back to the Strange West podcast. Once again, this is your host and word hustler extraordinaire, Trentano. And that about does it for the Cowboys vs. Nazi adventure in Chapter 13 of Paris High Noon by yours truly, Trentano. If you like what you heard, go ahead and go to parishighnoon.com to pick yourself a paperback or an ebook. If you want it right now, then go to parishighnoon.com and download the ebook. And don't forget, you can get Paris High Noon t-shirts and other swag at society6.com/Trentano. Thanks again to James K. Doyle for lending us his time and his talent. And as always, leading us out with their rendition of Eno Morricone's For a Few Dollars More is the Mighty Mitch Polzak and the Royal Deuces. And thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Happy trails.